Greetings! This is the third part of our presentation, which focuses on the fieldwork and its findings. After wildly asking many of our friends and visiting our favorite information ground, that being Starbucks, we gained access to the Engineering Design Team, a small company located in Hillsboro, Oregon. Housed in approximately 5,000 square feet of office and lab space, EDT has 25 employees, comprised of engineers, technicians, and administrative personnel. There are 7 hardware engineers and 5 software engineers. It is a very close-knit group of employees, all who participate on an annual retreat with their coworkers and families to have vacation time, take the time to get to know each other well, and do planning and collaboration. So these guys really know each other well. All the engineers are male. Here are some stats on the 7 who participated in our fieldwork. They are all within 7 years of one another, in their 50s, except one who is 41. Their years of experience in the field range from 14 to 35. And their time with this company is equally as lengthy, with 2 founders listing 21 years, then 19 years, 15, 10, 5, and finally 1 engineer who started last year. The educational levels vary from one attempting a PhD, 2 master's levels, and the rest having a lot of BS. BS of computer science or engineering. They've worked with mission control, Hubble Space Station, lots of digital video, and stoplight pictures, to just name a few. Check out their website by clicking this link. We used 4 methods of collecting data to study the information behavior of this group. Over a week period, observations were made on 3 occasions for 1 hour at 3 different times during 3 different days. That would be 9 to 10 a.m. on Monday, 11 to noon on Tuesday, and 2 to 3 p.m. on Thursday. There was no way to be unobtrusive, and the employees were very warm and polite. After a while, it seemed that they forgot about our presence. Surveys were given out during the 2nd visit. These survey questions were written with various research studies in mind, with emphasis from the following: Leckie and Pettigrew, Fidel and Green, Taprez, Anderson, and Mueller. A journal was attached to the survey as an option exercise, and we were pleased that some of the engineers were willing to participate. The journal was time-intensive, so there were a few situations recorded. The interview was done on the last visit after the hour observation in the one and only conference room. All engineers, except for 1, were very talkative and eager to give their opinions on various aspects of information seeking and information giving. Based on our literature review, we focused on a few underlying issues. Is the information behavior consistent with the findings in the literature search? Are there significant differences? How do the engineers view social networks, accessibility, and information grounds in relation to their work? What are the constraints to ideal information seeking and giving? Therefore, the survey questions address these issues. The first part of our survey asked the engineers to rate the information sources by how frequently they used the source, with 1 being never and 5 being every day. Then, as you can see on the slide, 2 meant a few times per year, 3 meant a few times per month, and 4 meant a few times per week. Then they were asked to rate, in order of importance, which of the attributes that they see here as being the most important with value 1 and the least important with value 10. Right now, I'd like you to stop the presentation and jot down the answers to these 2 questions. You can do it as yourself and see how your answers compare to the engineers, or you can rate the questions as you would think the engineers would answer them and compare what they say. Or you can do both scenarios before moving to the next slide. Here is how the engineers responded to the question about sources of information. Remember that they are rating the frequency of using the source, with 1 as never and 5 as every day. You can see that libraries and listserv are not very popular, and people within the firm and website, meaning internet, are very frequently used. Even though they use the internet all the time, talking to people gives a perspective that the internet cannot do. This validates the research literature. Here are the engineers' responses to rating, in order of importance, how these attributes relate to their information sources. 1 is the most important and 10 is the least important. As you can see, relevance, the 5th one down, is clearly the most important, and the right format, the 4th one from the bottom, is the least important. This is due to their confidence in finding information on the internet. Proximity has varied responses because, as we found out in the interviews, they didn't think much of it. They mainly dealt with the internet, so there was no proximity issues to think about. The same attitude holds true for ease of use. The survey results were mixed, yet accessibility is very important when discussed in the interview. The ratings on cost issues is interesting. The engineers did not rate it high in the survey, but it was clear by the end of the visits that cost and time are very important. Hello, they deal with deadlines and clients all the time. So what did we find out? The engineer's information behavior is consistent with the literature review. Various concepts were outlined in the previous presentation, including working with technical problems, minimizing the effort to find information, relying heavily on internal sources, and information needs changing throughout the project. How engineers define their professional work role is rather complex. This came up when we were trying to find an engineering department for our field work and by observing this group. We found that some engineers define themselves as managers or in another role and not as an engineer, even when they still exhibit engineering behavior. It is very clear from the survey that these engineers are not interested in social networking in relation to their work. We did observe that they had developed their own internal social networks. These engineers are working with very technical information. It's cutting-edge technology, so the forums on the internet do not address their questions at the same level of expertise. This would be a great topic to investigate further. Traditional concepts of the term printed material and libraries are just starting to be thought through by these engineers. I had a great discussion with someone who wasn't sure that the current terminology works right anymore. Materials, sources, take on various mediums, and as an example, only when a schematic is needed for a certain purpose is when it is printed. Nearly all of the engineers laughed at the concept of using a library, going to that brick building on Main Street. Even when they are using library services and online subscriptions for various information. There is a huge disconnect here between our two worlds. The observations were made by sitting quietly in the designated lunch area, which turned out to be in the corner of the main room near the mini kitchen. It is a very strong information ground for all employees. Due to the size of this company, it was fun to observe the many ways that unwritten rules of behavior were used to maintain the noise levels and having people work diligently at their job. There wasn't a lot of playing around there. Project deadlines and financial constraints highly impact the engineering's information behavior, even though they reported differently in the survey. This was evident in the observation, interview, and journals. Finally, these engineers have worked with the internet from the beginning. It is fascinating to hear and observe these software and a few hardware engineers in action. Many of the political and decisive issues we see in library and information science are what these engineers deal with on a daily basis. So what's next? As discussed in the literature review, there are many issues to study as we look at future trends. For this section, we have a few implications should we ever feel the need to do this again. The survey questions asked were purposely derived from earlier studies. However, more in-depth questions regarding Internet use should be added. Because of the inconsistency in self-reported surveys and having the engineer's self-reported behavior not always consistent with observations and interview results, it became very apparent that using all three of these methods made a huge and more accurate impact on our findings. Connecting engineers with updated practices of libraries would benefit both fields. So thank you for spending the time looking at our fieldwork with EDT, the Engineering Design Team. Spending time with these engineers certainly helped illuminate the concepts associated with their particular information behavior for us, and we hope it has for you. Click a link to the next section, and enjoy!